everybody, I'm Daniel G. Garza, and this is another episode of Put It Together. I'd like to welcome everybody. There's the new alarm going off right now. I want to welcome everybody who's watching us on Facebook, LinkedIn, and Twitter. Thank you for joining us. If you do me a favor and share that on your page so that your friends and family can join us and watch the show. If you're watching us on YouTube, would you scroll down, hit that subscribe button, and if you want to hit that notification bell, it'll let you know every time there's a new show on the page. And remember, we got stuff coming up almost every day of the week. On Mondays, you can find my horoscopes for the week. On Wednesdays, Kristen and Daniel. On Fridays, the Card Devo. And then on Saturdays, Put It Together at noon, 3 Eastern. So make sure you check us out. And then every once in a while, when there's time, we pop in a special show for you. So make sure that you are following us so you get all the notices. And you can follow me on all of the social pages: Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, YouTube, Instagram, TikTok. I've got my new page on Pinterest. For those of you that are not following me on Pinterest, go follow me there too. And then all of our other friends. I forget to mention that we're also on, we've got stuff going on next door, on some of the other advocacy pages. So wherever you're following me, please join us. To all the friends that I have over at my HIV team page who have been really kind and cool following me for the horoscopes, thank you guys for following. And I hope that one day you would like to be on my show. And yes, if you would like to be a guest on the show, make sure that you send me a message wherever you're watching, whatever page. Send me a message. Let me know that you want to be on the show and tell us how you put it together. Or maybe you have somebody you know that we like to that you'd like to hear their story. On today's show, where was it? Here we are. I just had it, and I just told her, "Here is your bio." And of course, what do? I close the page because why wouldn't I? Why would everything run smooth? On today's show, we have Brooke. I just asked her, Gurrad. Brooke is a liver transplant recipient, wife, mom, and chronically ill human. After a diagnosis of autoimmune hepatitis in 2005, she received a life-saving liver transplant that same year. Brooke is a chronic illness and organ transplant coach, providing support that comes from years of coaching, mentoring, and life experience. Her podcast, The Bonus Years, honors others' experience with chronic illness and gives them a platform to share their stories authentically and vulnerably. Brooke believes that every year of life past a diagnosis is a bonus, but that doesn't mean it's easy. She wants to guide people as they uncover who they are, what they're made of, and why it matters. So with that, because she has a really cool story, I'm going to bring her on. Hey, Brooke, how's it going?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you for joining us.
And thank you for having me. I'm glad to be here today.
We mentioned this in the pre-meeting. You're all in gold today, like Brooke in gold.
I do. I love the fashion, you know.
And well, I can't help. For those of you watching, I made a comment. The first thing, of course, as a good gay man, the first thing I did was look at her coat. I was like, "Girl, that's a good looking coat right there." So,
It's a great coat.
You're looking fabulous. Thank you. But yes, we mentioned the podcast. I don't want to forget to mention it that I had the honor of being a guest on Brooke's podcast, and from what you were mentioning, it'll be coming out pretty soon.
Pretty soon, yeah. I don't give dates anymore because I'm chronically ill. So as soon as I put a date out there, who knows what will happen.
Something happens. Yes. But we'll be posting those links as soon as they come out and when they're available. So make sure that if you're not following her, go check her out. And we're going to post her website in a minute so you can go check that out. But thank you for being here. So for everybody who always wonders how I know my guest, Brooke and I actually had to ask her because I forgot where we met. We met through Lightbulb.
Through Lifebulb. Yep.
How did you come to be associated with Lightbulb?
That's a great question. And I don't even know if I know fully the answer to that. It just kind of jumps on you, you know, how opportunities just jump at you. And so I had my transplant almost 17 years ago, and Lifebulb is fairly new. So I'm an ambassador for Transplant Life. So I do a lot of talking about my transplant, my experience. And then I saw you in Lifebulb and I was like, he's got a really cool story. We need to be friends.
She was like, I'm going to snag him.
Absolutely.
I'm going to get that little mess again. So for everybody who is not familiar with Lightbulb, I will post the link so you can go check them out. You can go on there if you're I was going to say into cancer. Yeah, if you're into cancer, go check them out. Um, if you have been diagnosed with cancers, if you're in recovery from addictions, or if you're a transplant survivor, IBD is one of the new
IBD.
pages that's
Yep.
opened up, and
Migraine is a big part of Transplant Life too.
so there's a different departments to LifeUp, and there is a monthly meeting that we join, and every month when I'm there, I always tell folks, if you want to share your story, come and share your story. So with that, I'm going to hush now because I want to hear your story. So Brooke Gurrad, tell us how you put it together.
Well, let's just start with saying I don't think I've put it all together yet. So maybe this could be like the episode where you're like, the one where she thought she put it together, but then it fell apart and she put it back together again. Because that's just how my life has been. So I'm 37 years old and I live in Washington State. And I really grew up like healthy, normal. Well, I say normal. I've never been normal. But I grew up in South Mississippi. So I grew up in the South where it was, hot all the time. That was the season. We just had heat all year. I never really liked the weather because I'm a pale flower and just get burned if I walk outside. So grew up healthy, decided I was going to try to like venture out after high school and go to college somewhere else. So I ended up in Tennessee, not really that far away, but far enough away. And halfway through my college education, I came home to visit my family before I went back to sing for the summer. I was a voice major in college. And as mothers often do, my mom looked at me and she said, "You just don't look well." And I said, "Well, I feel fine. I'm sorry you think I'm not well." And she convinced me to go get a checkup. And they drew blood and did all the things and said, "We'll call you in about a week with results if there's anything going on." Well, I got a call the next day and they were like, "We need you to come in." And anytime you hear, we might call you in a week, and then the next day you get a phone call, like that's the first thing you get, you're like, oh God, something's really wrong. So as I drop my earbud out of my ear. Okay. So I nervously went back to the doctor and they told me that my blood test showed that I had hepatitis. Well, the sheltered Southern girl that I was, I didn't know what hepatitis was. And I'm not super scientifically minded, so I don't recall paying attention that much in any health class about like what your body does. Like I was just like, it goes, your body goes, you feed it, normal things. So I was like, okay, explain hepatitis to me because I don't know what that means. And they were like, that means your liver is inflamed. Okay, inflamed liver. How do I fix it? Well, we're going to test you more and see if it's like A, B, or C, kind of see what to do. But right now, the best treatment is to drink a lot of fluids, eat some popsicles, rest, and your liver can regenerate. And so hopefully that's what will happen. So after a few tests, I came back negative for Hep A, B, and C. And they said, well, it might be an autoimmune hepatitis. My mom has an autoimmune disorder. And so genetically, that's something that happens. You have a parent with autoimmune, you end up with a different autoimmune disorder. And I did the resting thing and the popsicle thing and the drinking water thing and got worse, but I'm a little bit hard-headed. So a little bit, my parents are probably watching this laughing like, yeah, just a little bit. So I convinced them that I needed to go back to school and sing, even though I wasn't feeling well. And I believe that one of them had to drive me 6 hours back to school because I wasn't even really well enough to drive. But I basically was like, I'm an adult. I'm going to do what I want. I'll pay the consequences. Like, this is my one shot at this thing that I want. So I got back to Tennessee and started singing and remembered, like, now I remember I would like get really sick and have to like leave rehearsal and then come back and like pretended that nothing was going on. And I was drinking like a gallon of water a day and still just so thirsty. And one night I just woke up with kind of a sharp pain in my side. And I said, you know what? Let's just be safe. Let's go to the ER. So I ended up at the ER in a very small town hospital in Tennessee. And they didn't really know what to do with me. They did some blood tests and found out that my liver wasn't recovering the way that we anticipated. And I had to call my parents from Tennessee and say, hey, they're putting me in ICU, but I don't really know what's going on. So I need you guys to come. And I remember at that point just feeling, I don't know that scared is the word, but more, I think I felt more confused. I think I was like, if you tell me I do these things and I'm going to get better, why am I worse? And why, when I still feel mostly okay, am I going into the ICU? So I just had a lot of questions. And as a 20-year-old, I didn't really know my rights as a patient. I didn't know what I was allowed to ask. I waited for my parents, and then a lot of times they talked to my parents about me, even though I was legally an adult. And I just didn't know that's not how things are supposed to work. So ICU, parents arrive. We don't know what's going on. They finally say, it looks like your liver is, just not working and you might need a transplant. And I was like, nah, I don't need a transplant. I'm fine. Because if you've ever met a 20-year-old, they're all invincible. Like, oh, I'll just get better. Oh, it's just my body. I'll feed it and it'll go. Like, that was me. I had big dreams to accomplish. I had stuff to do. And this was an inconvenience along the way for me. And my parents were very distraught, obviously. And now that I am a parent, I understand that a little more. And just so overwhelmed by all of the options and the insurance and the paperwork. Those are the things I feel like people should never have to deal with when they're dealing with sick family members, is all the paperwork and all the decision. And a coworker of my dad's handed him a folder one day. And she said, I did some research for you. Here are the 3 best transplant centers closest to your house. Here's all the work. And I just remember thinking, wow, that's what you do for people when they have a need. I think that was one of those times where I realized it's not good to be it's not good enough for me anyway, to just say I'm thinking of you, I'm praying for you, I'm sending good vibes out into the universe for you. This woman was what are they incapable of doing right now? I'm going to do that for them and then give it to them. If they don't want it, that's great. But she showed up. She showed up for my family in a big way and was able to give my parents something to look at. So we ended up choosing a transplant center, and we picked New Orleans because that's about 2 hours from where I grew up. And they had, great reviews. I don't know how you get great reviews as a doctor. No one died today. I feel like it's not the same as going on Yelp and picking a restaurant, but it kind of felt like that.
0 people dead. Yes.
It's been 1 hour since our last incident.
For everybody watching, this is jokes that only people with chronic illnesses can probably make.
Yeah, it's one of those, you laugh or you cry all the time. So I choose to laugh at this point. During this moment, it was not a laughing time. It was very hard. And I don't ever joke to make light of it, but I've lived with this for a long time now. So I can look back and say, yeah, I remember feeling like an invincible 20-year-old where I was they're you need a transplant. And I'm like, nah, I'm good. I'm just going to go back to school. So I got flown in a hospital jet, one of the coolest flights I've ever had, to New Orleans from Tennessee, because I wasn't stable enough to drive in an ambulance for 6 hours, or 8 hours it would have been. And I've never been in such a small plane in my life. It was me on a stretcher and flight crew, and then one of my parents shoved in a corner. Wow. And got to New Orleans. They take me in through the ER, the ambulance lights were on and the sounds were on. And I was it's hard to think, oh, I'm probably dying when you're having conversations and you're able to walk around. They took me in through the ER, did the workup, got me into ICU. And the first doctor that came in looked at my chart and looked at me. And I looked at my chart. He looked at me. He was like, I expected you to be in a coma. And I was like, tell me more about this.
Wow.
On paper, everything about my case showed that I should have been in a coma. The ammonia levels in my brain were so high because my liver wasn't filtering any toxins that it affected my cognition for sure. Like now when I look back and go, yeah, I was like trying to perform and drinking water and thinking I was fine, but there was obviously something going on. So this doctor was like, you're too active to be in ICU. So let's speed up the story a little bit. They moved me onto like a pre-transplant floor. I was still pretty against having a transplant. And the transplant team came in and saw me. And at that point, they're giving me like tons of steroids to try to get my liver to like reboot. And they had to do a liver biopsy. And the team came in and they were like, so we just want you to know who we are in case you need a transplant. I was like, I won't be needing your services. Thank you so much. Have a nice day. And after that biopsy, we saw that the cell structure within my liver had collapsed to a point where they couldn't tell what caused my liver to fail. So from Mississippi to Tennessee to New Orleans, that was like a period of like two to 3 weeks. And I went from an inflamed liver, which is swollen, to, they said my liver was the size of my fist. And there was no hope for it to regenerate.
Wow.
So I got on the fast track of learning anatomy and how your body works, because I was like, I don't want to be blindly going into this. And they came in and they said, here's what's happening. Your best bet is a transplant. And I said, what if I don't want one? And that was like a legitimate question for me. Like this is a major surgery. I don't know anything about it. Like, what if I don't want it? And they said, you might live a week. And really, it didn't take any thinking at that point for me. It was like, okay, let's do it. And I didn't know at that point that, 17 people are dying every day waiting for a transplant. I didn't know at that point that, people are added to the waiting list constantly. I didn't know that it was difficult to get an organ.
Right.
So I was saying, let's do it. Like, when can we schedule it? And they're like, well, we have to do this testing on you. And within liver transplant, there's a scoring system. And they said, I mean, you're really sick, so the odds are good for you to get a transplant. And I remember asking questions about, so I can't have a living donor. No, because you need a whole liver, not a partial. Okay, so I'm essentially waiting and praying for something to save my life, but that means someone else is going to have to die. Yes. Okay. What do I do with that?
Wow.
This is the first time the reality of like my life is dependent on a decision someone else is going to make, and their family is going to make in their time of grief. And they don't know me, but they are the kind of people who have compassion and say, in my death, I want to still help someone. So that felt heavy.
Right.
And I got listed on the transplant list. It was June 21st, 2005. And 3 days later, I was asking for my midnight snack from my nurse, Jenny. And I always got graham crackers and a chocolate ice cream. That was my go-to at midnight. And she came in and she said, I can't give you your snack tonight. And I was like, why? It's the only thing I look forward to while I'm here. When I talk about my health, it's always like, don't take my food from me. Like, this is the thing I have control over. Yeah. And she said, because they found you a liver. And I was like, I'm sorry, what? Yeah, we're going to be prepping you for surgery, so you can't eat. And that night I was with my mom and my aunt, and it was like immediate excitement followed by like the heavy grief of like knowing that someone else had just lost a family member. And I just remember we gathered and we offered up a prayer of gratitude and then just a prayer for that family, because we didn't know, how things happened and what the situation was, but like I was going to be alive tomorrow because of a decision they made.
Wow, that's crazy. Okay, so you've unpacked a bunch of stuff, so I have to go back and ask some questions.
Okay.
number one, like my curiosity is if knowing now, like that your mom has an immune
An
system,
autoimmune disorder. Yeah.
disorder. I don't know why I couldn't get the words out. An autoimmune disorder. Knowing that, thinking back, would it like is smart to get your kids tested now? Like if like knowing that you have something going on,
Hmm.
is it proactive? There's the word I'm looking for. Proactive
Yeah.
to test your kids and go, hey, let's see if let's see if if I pass down anything on to you other than
Yeah.
blue eyes and blonde hair or whatever. But
I
you know what I
passed
mean?
down nothing to my children. So that was a conversation my husband and I had. And part of it is we made the decision to adopt our kids. So part of that was the health risk to me of carrying a pregnancy, the health risk to the child that I would be carrying, because it would make it very dangerous for me. I'd have to change medications, which could potentially send me into liver failure again. And so we talked a lot about the risk of, did my husband want to be a single parent at the expense of us having a kid that looked like us or had our DNA? And what it came down to for us is that that's not what makes a family. We choose a lot of our family. And so we decided to adopt our daughter and our son. And it's really interesting because I know they don't have my genetic disorders or my husband's, and we have relationships with their birth families enough that we can ask them, like, hey, are you allergic to dogs? Because they're definitely allergic to a dog, And so that was part of our decision as well, just because we didn't really know what caused it.
But would it
That
be something that like
would I recommend it?
yeah, like we would suggest it to parents with
Mm,
an immune system that is compromised? Like, hey, as if you're gonna have kids, this is something that to look for. Or can you? Because that's the other question that I had. Like, is there a test? Could it have been somewhere to like, predict or say, hey, we're gonna keep an eye on your liver per se?
no.
Nothing.
In my case, I mean, because my mom had a different autoimmune disorder that didn't affect her liver. It was just the autoimmune markers that were passed to me, and so it manifested differently in my body. We
Gotcha.
wouldn't have known. We wouldn't have known what to look for. And there are certain genetic disorders that you can test for and know that it can be passed down. And I don't, I don't actually feel qualified to even recommend or not recommend. I think it's really personal, and that every family has to weigh the benefits and the consequences of it.
Gotcha. And then my second, as you move down in your story, and because I was okay. Grey's Anatomy. I watch Grey's Anatomy. Not that I'm ashamed of it, people. I just like to
I
watch it.
still watch it. I can't
Yes,
let go. I have a
I,
problem.
Meredith and I go way back, and but of course, I still believe that it has not been the same since Sandra left the show. But that's just me. I love Sandra, but in the episodes that I'm watching now, she's dating a transplant doctor. I'm catching
He
up on
sure
the season.
is.
He's a hottie too.
Yeah, he
But
is.
that aside, he. It's interesting because in this, I'm catching up on the episodes, and in the episode I was watching this week, he's talking about wanting to change his career choice because he's like, I have a career where I save lives, but I also have to count on somebody. And I'm paraphrasing the line, but
Yeah.
basically, it's like I have to wait for somebody to die to save a life. Do transplant recipients receive any kind of therapy or psychological help or pre or post of anything?
That is my favorite topic to talk about, honestly, because my situation was so sudden that we didn't have time to like prepare properly. And because there's so much trauma to your body, regardless of if it's like the most easy surgery or situation, mental health is a huge frustration that the transplant community has after the fact. That we say, oh, we didn't know how much therapy we were going to need, we didn't know how much trauma we were going to encounter. um, and that's one of the things I speak really openly about is my own depression and anxiety that runs in my family, and also my medical trauma and PTSD that I've been working with a therapist through. But I didn't realize that that was a piece of the puzzle that your doctors don't necessarily think about. And I can't speak for every transplant center because they all do it differently. But they told me, this is going to be a new normal and your life will be different. But everything for doctors is about physical, right? So they're measuring my blood and my liver function and all those things. My mental health was not in the discussion anywhere. And that was something I had to like fight for and advocate for myself.
Yeah.
Yeah,
because that's one thing. And now that I speak about anal cancer, when people ask me what should you do when you're diagnosed, what would be the first suggestion you would make? I go get therapy, like right off the bat. Like as soon as you get the diagnosis, you and your caregiver should be going to therapy right from the beginning. Keep going for as long as you can, and then all the other things that I talk about. But because it is a new normal, especially with an ostomy bag. It's a new normal. Your body is changing, which changes your mind.
Yes.
Body, mind, and spirit, basically.
Yes.
Does that make sense?
It changes everything. Yeah. And they kind of do a mental health examination on you prior to transplant to see if you have a will to live and have a support system. But our life restarts after transplant, and everything we do is different. There was a period of time post-transplant that I would wake up every day and cry because the first thing I had to do was take a handful of pills. And by the time I swallowed all the pills, the alarm would go off for the next set of pills. Wow. And then, like, after I got that handful of pills done, it was take your blood pressure, take your temperature. Like, I had a very scheduled day, and all it felt like I had time for was taking medicine, trying to eat, but nothing tasting good, walking around a little bit. And I was frail. I weighed like 220 when I went in, and a lot of that was fluid. And I came out at 113. So I was literally just like skin on bones, no muscle mass. And I didn't want it. I was like, if this is my new normal, I don't want it.
Yeah.
And so,
and I can relate to that because when I was diagnosed with AIDS, I was 110 pounds at 5'6", and even that, I don't know for you, but even losing that much weight causes a mental impact because to this date, I always measure how thin I am or how much weight I'm losing by my cheekbones. My cheekbones start popping up, and there is a certain look where in my head, I'm like, I'm too skinny. Like I'm skinny. Like I'm looking sick. You better start eating healthy again, which for me is stress eating because now I'm stressing. Does that make sense? Like, do you have those visual measurements in your head?
It's similar. I would say there's like a disordered eating trigger that happened for me because I had always been a healthy weight, but I had never been a thin person. And when I looked in the mirror for the first time at 113 pounds and tried on clothes, like none of my clothes fit me. And I started crying because they just would fall off. And outwardly, it was like, I'm dealing with, this is not my body. Like, I don't know what to do with this body. And also, like, I'm really thin now. It's a hospital diet. Like, it sounds vain, but it was the easiest weight loss plan ever. And the more I talk, the more I talk to transplant patients, it's like, what sucks is that it's a quick weight loss. Like anytime we go in the hospital, we drop 10, 20 pounds. And we know that thinking is not healthy. And so I've worked with a nutritional therapist as well to help me like get my brain back in the right place about eating and food and about like that is not a healthy way to lose weight. When you're losing weight that fast, something is not going right with your body. Yeah. Don't recommend that weight loss plan.
Exactly. So for everybody watching, my guest today is organ transplant coach and transplant survivor. Is that a good way to say it? Is a transplant survivor a good term? Okay.
Some people say like transplant warrior. I'm not really a warrior of anything. I'm nonviolent. And transplant survivor sometimes sounds like, I don't know, like someone tried to I don't know. I just say I had a transplant, or
Exactly. So,
everyone has a different preference.
transplant person and coach Brooke Gurrad is talking to us today about her journey and answering questions or comments that you might have regarding transplant. I want to thank Lightbulb, which I will post the site in a minute, for introducing us. So if you have any questions about transplant, whether you've been through one or not, if you're just curious, please, if you're watching,
Absolutely.
you're watching this on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, or YouTube, ask us questions and join the conversation. So obviously you were 20 years old. We talked a little bit about your family now, like your husband.
Mm-hmm.
Is that something that you bring up? Like, I don't know if you, for people who are single, like, do you put that on your Tinder profile? Like, hey, I have a new
man.
liver. I'm 30, I'm 30 years old, but my liver is only 20.
Yeah.
Like, is this, because for instance, somebody who's HIV positive, like myself, that is
Mm-hmm.
something that you discuss during the dating process.
Yes.
Or I usually, I mean, I've been with Christian for 10 years, but when we were dating, it was on my profile as something. Is this something that affects your daily life? Is it something that you have, like, you feel you should talk about?
So I have this, amazing husband who knew me pre-transplant. We dated 6 months in college, and then I broke up with him because he was taking too much time away from my goals. He loves to tell people that I did this to him, and then within 2 months, my liver was failing. So we got married after my transplant, but he was present through the process via phone. So he knew, and he also thought that he knew what it was like. I tried very hard to scare him away and to say, like, this is not for the faint of heart. Like, I know that you think you know, but you haven't lived with me. Like, this is not easy. And I can put on a good face for a weekend visit, but like, then you don't see the like 5 days I spend in bed recovering from it. So I feel glad for myself, like in a very selfish way, that I didn't have to date a lot post-transplant. I did date a little bit and nothing serious. And I talked to a lot of single women and men who are like, hey, trying to date. Don't know when to bring this up. Because like when is the right time? Do you want to tell somebody like on your profile and then have them swipe the other way? Do you want to like see if you connect on other things and then go, oh, and by the way, this is what's going on with me? Like, it doesn't feel like there's ever a good time because you don't want to keep it a secret, but you don't want to like lead with it because it's not like the cutest part of you, You don't want to like wear a t-shirt that says I'm HIV positive or I had a liver transplant. Do you want to be my spouse / caregiver? Like, do you want to give up your life to take care of my needs? Cool.
I'm a Capricorn, light walks on the beach, and I'm HIV positive. What's up?
Like, there's just not a good way to do it. And so that's another thing. Like, there's a gap. There's a gap in generations and like what matters to us post-transplant. So like you've got the pediatric patients who like don't really know what happened because they're kids and their parents carry all the trauma and the taking the meds and managing. And by the time they grow up, most of them healthy, happy, it's not even a factor. They're like, yeah, I had a transplant, but I just take my meds. Then there's like the middle range of us that were like 20, or 18 to like 35. I'd say we find our best community on Instagram. People say that social media is, the pretty parts of your life, but we've created an environment where we get to, talk with each other and be real. Because I think if you're asking for real content to come your way, like you also have to be real. And so I don't get on and post only when I have makeup on. I don't get on and post only when I'm in the bed dying. It's this conversation of like, here's what it looks like when you're at Disney World, like went with my family and you have a migraine and everyone else goes to the park and you need to take a nap. Like, this is the reality of what it looks like living with the side effects of medication and chronic illness. But this middle age range is really vocal about our mental health needs, about like, what do we do if we want to have a baby? What do we do if we don't know how to do this dating thing post-transplant? Like, there's so much to navigate. And that's why I decided to start coaching chronically ill people and people with organ transplants. Because it's like you just need a guide. You need somebody to walk with you through it and maybe not give you all the answers, but to help ask you questions and help you identify your own values and move through the stuckness of like, what do we do now?
Yeah, because if there's anything that I've discovered over my 21 years being HIV positive and 7 post cancer and then 6 post ostomy and everything else that falls under the umbrella of being sick, um, that yes, I have this front. Like, can I do everything I want to do? Yes, I can. But you don't see the naps in between during the day, or that 5-minute break that I need to take, or the pills that I have to take. But I can still function, and the realization that yes, we're all under this umbrella of HIV, but we're each holding on to a different part of the umbrella, if that makes sense.
Right. Yeah.
Um, and I can give you some guidance on what to expect and what's to come, but your stories can be completely different. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. And I believe that a lot. We can't just say, oh, we've all had transplants, so we're all the same. There's something about looking someone in the face and saying, oh, you've had a transplant too. I don't feel so alone. That's valuable. It's the community, it's the knowing you have support, but also like owning your own story and being authentic about it. I love storytelling. I love writing. I love movies that tell a good story. I love that you're an actor and that you get to be a part of that storytelling thing. Like, I want people to look at their own story and go, oh, these things are valuable. Like, this is the path of my life, and I get to control and choose some things, and some things I don't. And what am I going to do with those things? And to know that like I can just hop on Instagram or Reddit. Like, there's a strangely large community of transplant patients on Reddit. And I think it's because of the anonymity of it. That when you get on there, you can ask anything and people are going to tell you like, hey, I've been through that, or I haven't, but this person has, talked to them. And the relief you feel, like the relief when you look in someone's eyes and you're like, oh, you get it.
Yeah.
There's no feeling like that.
Yeah. It's the non-conversations and a conversation that do it for me sometimes, where like people just like, oh, you understand. Like anal cancer is not as common spoken about as other cancers, but when somebody hears me say anal cancer and they give me that look, and I'm like, yeah, let's talk about butts, guy. Let's talk about butts and do it. If there was something that, thinking back to when you were first told about transplant, if there's something that you wish somebody had told you, what would that be?
This has changed. This answer has changed over the years, I think, as I get older. I really think I would have liked for someone to look me in the face and say, like, it's okay to be afraid and still do things. Like fear is not the reason to give up. Fear is the reason to push through. Because I could have just given up after or during. I could still just give up. There are times when I want to. And then I remember, like, for me, it's just knowing that, like, there's purpose in my life by me just existing. Like, I don't have to perform or do anything, but I'm living my life and honoring my organ donor by living and like learning what it means to live fully and to be in the moment, to enjoy my people, to connect other people who need people. It's that piece for me of like, it's okay to be afraid. And it's the piece of like, talk about your mental health with people, because we're all dealing with it, I feel like, to some degree. And now that we've been through a pandemic, it's even worse. Like, please get a therapist, like get in a support group, like get some people around you that can anchor you and help you move on.
Yeah, that's actually one of my favorite quotes, and it's from Susan Jeffers. feel the fear and do it anyway. And because that's kind of what I tell people now. It's like getting tested for HIV, or when they find out they have cancer, have to go to chemo and radiation. I'm like, they're like, well, I'm afraid. I'm like, okay, well, I get it. So, do it. Like,
and fear tells us that something matters. Like, if we're not afraid, it doesn't matter to us that much. But when someone tells you that your life is in danger, or you only have so many years, or you could die, the fear is saying, like, this matters. So what am I going to do now? And I love that. I'm like, let's go. Let's do something.
yeah.
Because it's that fear that, like, makes the adrenaline rush. Like, you know.
Yeah.
Ready to go skydiving. Haven't done that yet.
Ooh, that's on my bucket list to go get, and mainly because nobody around here wants to go with me. And I'm like,
I'll go with you.
let's go do it. Let's do it, girl.
Okay.
I was supposed to do it. I was supposed to do it when I turned 50. That was going to be my gift when I turned 50, but we were 2020 and couldn't do it. So now I'm going to hit for 55. Like 55, okay. I'm going to do it. So right before I hit the senior menu at IHOP.
When your AARP kicks in.
Girl, I'm ready for it.
I'll take a discount wherever I can get it.
It's really interesting, and I have to comment on this, that and there's a couple of people who have been to transplants that have been on the show. There is this calmness in the way y'all tell your story. I'm sure, I'm guessing, did it take you some time to come to grips or come to peace, make peace with it, or were you pretty like on board through the process?
Well, while I was in the hospital, I was very, like, deeply rooted in Christianity. And there was this part of me that felt like it was a test from God, and that I had to prove something. And then when I overcame it, that, like, I went through all of this shit, basically. And when I overcame it, then I could share my story and it would help people. I still love Jesus. Like, for everyone watching who's freaking out right now that knows me, calm down. But it was that drive initially that was like, you've got to tell your story so that it's worth something. As I've gotten older and I've, thought through my story a lot more, I love telling my story now. And it's not because I feel like I have to earn anything by doing it. It's a part of who I am. And so I feel like it's integrated into who I am now. And I'm not telling my story in the past tense because my story is still going on. And I think it's really, like, that's a transformational way to think for me. Like, we are still on the journey, and I can tell you about what happened in the past, but there's stuff happening now that I'm still learning and walking through. And it comes from a different place. So when I was in the hospital and I was young, I was like, I'm being tested. I have to prove that I'm worthy and that I'm faithful to carry all this, which made me put up a wall against being vulnerable with people, because I felt like I needed to look like I had it together. Like, yeah, I was the spitting image of inspiration porn for disability. Like, yes, please tell me, like, how I inspire you. Like, I needed the feedback, and now I'm like, don't tell me that I'm inspiring to you when I'm just living my life. Like, I'm glad if having the conversation is a gift to you, and I'm grateful for the ability to share my story and be healthy enough to do that right now. It's not always the case. And when I'm sick in bed, I don't feel guilty anymore for like not honoring my gift of life. Like, I can rest and say, like, my body needs rest, and that is good. So I'm going to honor that.
Yeah.
And so that wall I had built up to try to like make everything look perfect and pretty, it's still in the back of my head a lot. And it's something I'm constantly navigating through to say, like, I don't want to be perfect. I want to be in relationship. And you can't do both.
I dig it. I had my therapy session yesterday. My therapist, I just changed therapists in December, and he was asking me, what did you work with the previous therapist that like we can put aside now so we can work on other things? And I said that. Like, I'm so glad that somebody else released that. I was like, I've stopped stepping up to the podium and telling you everything I thought you wanted to hear, so you could see how wonderful I am and surviving everything that God has put in my way and the universe. And then we worked on it. I'm like, you know what? I feel like my authentic story, like, hey, there are days when I feel like crap. And I get out of bed, brush my teeth, and I celebrate that because that's all that's gonna happen today. And
Oh yeah.
I need you to hear that so that you know that when you don't feel like doing anything, that it's okay, that's perfect. Because yes, some people tend to look at us and go, you have a show, you're acting, you're doing all these other things, like you must have it all together, you must have it all put together. And I'm like, no, that's just the name of my show.
Yeah. That's why I was like, I don't have it put together, Daniel. It's still in shambles. We're working on it. But it's going to make some really nice stained glass later on, you know. You shatter all the pieces and then you put them together and it's this beautiful art.
Well, folks, we come to the part of the show. We're 15 minutes till the end. This is the part of the show. Oh, that wrong one. This is the part of the show where I ask my guest, Brooke Gurrad. I love that last name. Tell us, can you share some words of wisdom with the folks watching the show?
Oh, wow. I mean, you did warn me about this, but I'm not one of those people who's going to like script it. So the moment has come, friends, for me to offer you all of the words of wisdom that I have. And they are limited. So 15 minutes is too much. Really, I would just say to anybody who's watching this live or watching this later, learn who you are and then learn to like who you are. I think it's so important for all of us to really know who we are and what we want, and then to decide if we can embrace that or not. Because I think a lot of times we know who we are and we can't reconcile that with like, oh, but maybe I don't like that. And so when you're anxious, because I don't know anybody who's not at this day in age, when you're anxious, say like, okay, do I want to completely get rid of that anxiety, or do I want to find something that's valuable within that makes me who I am? Or when you can't get out of bed, instead of feeling guilty. I mean, as a mom, as a wife, I feel guilty sometimes for being in bed and my husband having to do all the things. But I know that I'm honoring my body, and I know that he's not trying to make me feel guilty. He's the one who's saying, take care of yourself. Listen to what you need. Like, we want you healthy. We want you present with us. And people, just give yourself grace. Like, perfection is not the end game. And I know that like social media gets a bad reputation for encouraging us to like just put out what we want people to see. But the only way that will change is if we put out what we really are and the stuff we want to see. That's how you make the community of people that you want to be around. So be gracious, because the journey hasn't stopped if you are still breathing air, and you have the opportunity to change your mind, to grow, to apologize for when you were wrong. Hello. I mean, I'm wrong. And I'm the first to say, I'm wrong. Yeah. I learned something new and now I know better. Forgive me. And then when you screw up, just, grace is not an excuse. It's not an excuse to just be a jerk.
One of the things that I did, and I've talked about this on the show before, the day that I was diagnosed, which, by the way, I'm coming on to 7 years on May 5th. So May 5th is my cancer anniversary.
Cancer anniversary.
anniversary. Say that 3 times fast, people. The day that we were driving back to Christian's house, I was texting my sisters to let them know, hey, I need to talk to you. I just got some news. I'm texting and I'm not even looking at Christian. And I'm like, I'm going to make a video when I get home. And he's like, of course you are. Like, that's you. And if you go back to my YouTube page and checked out my cancer diary, it's 13 days of cancer diary. But there are a couple of videos there where it's just like bawling, snot hanging, ugly cry. Because I was like, this is how I feel today. And there were other days where I was like, hey, I'm feeling pretty good today. Like, this is a good video. But then there were days like, but it was that what you just said. It was if I be one of those things about be the change you want to see, and what I wanted to see was people being completely honest about who they were, what they were going through. So let me show. This is the website, folks. Go check her out on the website. What can they find at your website?
So, blog posts from myself and other chronically ill people. You can find the podcast there and links to every platform it's available on. You can also find out more about me, and I do coaching for chronically ill, and I do consulting for small businesses because I believe that life is too short to do the things you don't enjoy doing. So I can help people build systems into their business so that they can do the part that they have the vision and the creativity for. You can see the events we have coming up. So next weekend we have a virtual transplant mixer. It's the first time we're doing this to kind of help connect people. And we'll be doing a lot during Pediatric Transplant Week to support parents of pediatric transplant patients. You can figure out how to be an organ donor on my website. It's so fun. You should check it out.
Let me see if I can find your poster really quick. Here it is. Give me 2 seconds. We're going to show the poster so you folks can check it out. Where is it? I just had it. There we go. Go check it out.
Whoop.
There's the information. There's the info. Go check it out. If you're not following her on Twitter, there's her Twitter handle. Go find it. Check it out. You get all the information you can. This is her website. Let me stop sharing this. If you heard it, for those of you that heard us talk about Lightbulb, here is the website. Go check it out. If you want any more information or want to connect to people, either in transplant community, in the recovery community, cancer, IBD, go check it out. They do a lot of really cool things. So for those of you watching, if you have new programs or new ideas that you want to start, they regularly have contests basically where you can submit your work and win prizes. I think one of the prizes for recovery several years ago was $25,000, which is excellent to start a program. So go check it out. Yeah. So, and plus you get to meet people like us there. You can become an ambassador.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Before, is there anything that I didn't ask you or we didn't bring up that you want to bring up? We have about 7 minutes to go.
Oh gosh. Transplant, not dead yet. Checking off the list. The first 3 years of my transplant. So I had a transplant. I went back to school, had to relearn how to sing because I was a voice major, and they cut through all your abdominal muscles when they do the surgery. Relearn how to sing. The next year I got West Nile virus, and I lost my speech, my vision, and my ability to walk. And then the year after that, I got the swine flu. And those first 3 years were just like, okay, this is not the new normal I thought would happen. Don't want that. So, that's just a fun little tidbit to share briefly.
Okay, you're an overachiever. That's what I heard. You're just
100% I'm an overachiever. and I'm also an Enneagram coach. So if anybody out there knows Enneagram, I am the classic type 3, the achiever. I'm striving to feel outstanding at everything I do. I also use that as a coaching tool to figure out how to be settled in that. Daniel, I'll give you a free session.
Yeah, anybody that's known me for a while knows, like, because one of my favorite mottos to tell people is, if you think I can do it, I know I can. Because I've learned in 51 years that I tend to myself. I don't know what the
Hmm.
right word. I under myself, like, and people usually around me are like, "Oh, Daniel Garza can do that. Tell Garza to do
Hmm.
it." And people around me is like, "Hey, have you ever done this?" I'm like, "No. You want
No,
to
but
do
I'll
it?
do it.
Sure. Do you think you can do it? Well, you think I can, and sure, let's do it. I mean, that's how I
Yeah.
became everything
Are
I
you also the person who's like, if you tell me I can't do it, I will also do it?
oh yeah, no. If I tell family or friends like, oh yeah, look, I'm taking a class in this, and they're like, really? Oh, you doubt me, human.
I'll
I will
show
avenge
you.
myself. And yeah, no, yeah, totally, totally. Well, that's how I got into. I mean, that's really how I got into acting. That's really how I got into comedy, life coaching, spirituality, card readings, Reiki. Like everything has been a series of. I don't know if you can pull it off, or the opposite, totally. Like I think you would be good at this. And Reiki was something that I had never thought of. It was something that was not in my wheelhouse. And then somebody's like, do it. Like they were like, I'll pay for the class for you to go. And I was
Send them
like,
my way.
okay, fine, I'll do it. And
And
now
now you love it.
Now I'm a Reiki master. So there you go.
Yeah.
Yeah. Don't go away. Let me just show everybody, before everybody watching, remember that we've got shows every day of the week, pretty much. Where's my thing? Where there it is. Check us out on Wednesdays with the Christian and Daniel show at 6, 9 Eastern. Fridays, a Card Devo at 5, 8 Eastern. And then on Saturdays, put it together at 12, 3 p.m. Eastern. You can check us out on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and LinkedIn. If you're watching us on YouTube, do me a favor, scroll down, hit that subscribe button. We need subscribers, please. Plus the notification bell, because that lets you know every time a new video is posted. And remember, on Monday mornings, we get horoscopes for the week. So make sure you check those out. You can find everything about us at littlemexicanproductions.com, hashtag Little Mexican Productions Inc. And we'll be back with more shows soon. There's a lot of traveling. I just want to tell everybody I'm very fortunate right now. I'm very blessed. God and the universe are being really good to me with lots of work, but there's also required lots of traveling. So that's why some shows get knocked off and postponed and rescheduled. So for my guests who might be watching that I've emailed you and said, hey, we need to postpone, it's only because I have to travel on weekends right now, but we will catch up on the shows. I promise you. I'm booked through August, and some shows have to be rescheduled. So if I have to reschedule, please just know that it's nothing personal. It's just this is my career, and this is what I have to do. If you want to get in touch with Brooke, let me give you again her website. Go check her out right there. Brooke, it has been such a pleasure. Thank you so much for coming on the show. Let me leave that up.
It's always fun to chat with you, and we'll go skydiving. Like, I'm not joking.
Yeah,
I'll fly to California, and we'll do it.
And then tell folks about the bonus years, a little bit about the bonus years, because I'm a guest on the show, so I'm promoting it too.
Yeah. So Bonus Years Podcast is my storytelling platform where I interview people with chronic illness, people who have overcome hard things, people who are still going through hard things. It's really encouraging. Like every time I interview someone, I learn so much. And Daniel's is going to be a 2-part because he has so much to say, and it's so good. So I'll make sure to communicate with him when I'm going live with those, so you guys can all enjoy them as well.
Thank you. I didn't know it was a two-parter because that's how much we talk, folks. That's just
because we talked so much. But it was fun.
It's true. It's true. I tell people when they invite me on shows, I'm like, how much time do I have? Like, what do you want me to talk about? Because I have a story, folks. It's 51 years of life, but like, it's a long story. So
yeah.
Brooke, I'm going to put you in the green room. Don't go anywhere. Let me just say goodbye to everybody. Thank you so much, sweetheart. I enjoyed talking to you.
Of course. I enjoyed it too.
For everyone watching, thank you so much for joining us. This has been another episode of Put It Together live stream. I'm your host, Daniel J. Garza. If you want to be a guest on the show, shoot me a message, whatever board you're watching, whatever channel. If you know somebody who'd be a good guest, send them my way. And let's see the story. For now, I want to thank Brooke for joining me. Thank y'all for watching, whatever channel you're watching on. And hey, put it together. See you next time. Bye-bye.